The forgotten truth about what happens after you die. Everyone you love will be forgotten, and so will you. Right now, somewhere in Germany, a worker is standing over a burial plot that hasn't seen a visitor in over 2 decades. He isn't there out of respect. He's there with a shovel, because by week's end, that headstone will be removed, the ground leveled and reseeded, and within months, a different body will occupy that exact space. This isn't some macabre anomaly, it's standard practice. Across most countries, once a family either stops paying maintenance fees or simply dies out themselves, cemeteries eventually recycle the plot. Crews exhume the remains, and a new casket takes the vacated spot. In the UK, they've streamlined this even further. The City of London Cemetery has been using a technique called lift and deepen since 2007. Rather than relocating the old remains, they simply excavate the grave further down, shift the existing skeleton to the bottom, and place a new coffin above it. 2 unrelated people, sharing one plot forever. In the US, the marker just stays, slowly eroding, while whoever's beneath it fades from memory. But the legal details barely matter. Visits stop within 3 generations regardless. An unvisited grave has already ceased to exist in any meaningful sense, paperwork aside. Most of us assume graves are permanent, a name in stone, belonging to a family forever. But eternal rest is a fairly recent invention. It dates to 1831, when Mount Auburn Cemetery opened near Boston, the first American cemetery designed like a park, selling private plots as undisturbed forever to a middle class wanting something more dignified than crowded churchyards. We've absorbed that pitch so completely, we mistake it for ancient tradition, when it was really just 19th century marketing. The decline follows a predictable pattern. Visitors taper off first. Then flowers and decorations stop appearing altogether. Over decades, engraved lettering erodes into illegibility. Moss creeps across the stone, which eventually tilts, sometimes collapsing entirely, and the plot sinks back into the surrounding lawn. A century later, the stone might technically remain standing, but the name has worn into an unreadable shape. After 3 centuries, there's a good chance the cemetery itself no longer exists. The grave doesn't vanish outright. It just stops functioning as a grave. Here's a quick exercise. Try listing all 4 of your great-grandparents by full name. Statistically, 96 out of 100 people can't do it. These were real people, alive less than a century ago, who once held the infants who eventually became your grandparents. Without them, you simply wouldn't exist. And yet you've forgotten them entirely. 3 generations appears to be roughly the natural lifespan of human memory. Past that 70 to 90-year mark, nearly everyone fades from recollection. And sometimes that erasure begins well before death. In Japan, there's a specific term for it, kodokushi, meaning lonely death. More than 70,000 Japanese citizens die alone in their homes annually, and roughly 4,000 of those bodies aren't discovered until at least a month has passed. Sometimes over a year. Neighbors typically find out from the smell. An entire cleanup industry has emerged specifically to handle these apartments. Notably, most kodokushi victims have living relatives. Children, cousins, old friends who simply stopped reaching out. In these cases, the isolation precedes the grave. People become unvisited long before there's even a grave to visit. Not even Mozart escaped this. He died in Vienna in 1791 at 35, buried in an unmarked communal grave at St. Mark's Cemetery. About a decade later, the plot was reused. Standard practice, even for him. His widow tried to find the spot and couldn't. Mozart's remains have been missing for over 2 centuries. The monument bearing his name is just an educated guess. Rudolph Valentino is an even starker case. In the mid-1920s, he was arguably the most famous film star on Earth. When he died in 1926, at 31, 100,000 mourners flooded New York streets. Riots broke out. People fainted. Today, most people have never heard his name. A century erased total global fame down to nothing. If we couldn't preserve Mozart's body or Valentino's fame, there's little reason to think we'll fare any differently. Neuroscientist David Eagleman described this with a framework worth sitting with. We each die 3 separate deaths. The first is biological, when the body stops functioning. The second occurs at burial or cremation. The third, the one rarely discussed, happens at some unknown future point when someone speaks your name out loud for the final time, ever. For most people, that third death lands roughly 3 generations after the first, the same span that already erased your own great-grandparents from your memory. Your children will likely remember you vividly. Your voice, your scent, the texture of your aging hands. Your grandchildren will retain fragments, maybe one story, a photograph, the smell of your home during holidays. Your great-grandchildren might know your name from a family tree, and vaguely what you did for work, if even that. Your great-great-grandchildren almost certainly won't know you ever existed at all. Some people linger longer in memory, usually because they achieved fame, kept written records, or happen to have a descendant fascinated by genealogy. But for most of us, 3 generations is the practical ceiling. Here's the consolation, though. That exact same forgetting erases everyone who ever judged you too. The critical boss, the relatives who tallied your shortcomings, the friends who quietly turned cold. They're all on the identical timeline toward being forgotten. The shame attached to you dies right alongside them. Marcus Aurelius made this observation roughly 2,000 years ago. The people whose opinions you're anxiously trying to manage are themselves about to become dust. Anthropologists estimate your genuine social circle, the people who actually know and remember you, caps out around 150 individuals. Everyone beyond that is essentially a stranger you've been performing for no real reason. Even your own memory of yourself erodes. Think of the childhood best friend you swore you'd stay close to forever, whose face you now genuinely struggle to picture. The ambition you held onto fiercely in your 20s, whose appeal you can barely reconstruct now. A decade ago, you valued entirely different things than you do today. This forgetting isn't something waiting patiently for your death. It's been quietly underway your entire life. In a sense, you've been gradually burying earlier versions of yourself all along. Somewhere out there is a teacher who taught you your letters, a clerk who handed you your first paycheck, a neighbor who watched you grow up. They thought about you for years. You probably can't picture their faces now. You're not just being forgotten, you're forgetting just as fast. Your body goes first, then the people who loved you lose their grip on your memory, then your name follows. Cremation doesn't change this. Ashes get scattered, lost, or discarded too. A handful of names survive millennia. Socrates, Buddha, Tutankhamun, roughly 100 out of 100 billion people who've ever lived. The odds aren't on our side. You're not heading toward being forgotten. You're already mostly there. 8 billion people alive right now don't know your name. The billions still to be born won't either. Death doesn't cause this erasure. It just finishes what indifference already started. A few people saw this coming and fought back. Genghis Khan, who died in 1227, had his burial site hidden. Witnesses killed, horses trampling the ground flat, a river diverted over it. 8 centuries and multiple satellite searches later, his tomb has never been found. Most of us are forgotten by accident. He chose it. Here's a useful reframe. You've technically already experienced non-existence. For roughly 13 billion years before your birth, you simply didn't exist. The universe carried on perfectly fine without you. Stars burned out. Empires rose and collapsed. People married, raised children, built cities, created art, fought wars. None of it paused to wait for you, because you hadn't happened yet. When you eventually die, you're essentially returning to that exact same state. People tend to imagine death as some conscious entity trapped in darkness. But it's not that at all. It's simply a return to the condition that preceded your existence, and that condition was entirely unremarkable. Something does persist, though, just not in the form most people expect. The particular way your grandfather pronounced a certain word passed to your parent, then to you, eventually surfacing in conversations your own children will have long after you're gone. A family recipe nobody specifically remembers learning. A small act of kindness someone showed you during a rough year, which you later passed along to a different person 15 years afterward. Nothing of you survives intact under your name, but fragmented versions of you persist constantly, embedded in other people. Most of any life, honestly, is composed of unremarkable moments. Ordinary weekday evenings, an hour spent cooking dinner with music playing, an aimless walk taken for no particular reason. None of that will ever appear in an obituary. None of it is meant to. But that's precisely where actual living happens. This isn't a tragedy, it's arguably the entire point. Genuine permanence would actually function as a punishment. Imagine being remembered in perfect detail forever, perpetually observed, eternally judged, your worst moments preserved on some permanent record with no expiration date. Forgetting is exactly what allows each new generation to start with a clean slate. It's what gives your shame, whatever it is, a natural endpoint. Mortality isn't a punishment at all. It's closer to mercy. This erasure runs on a quiet, exact schedule. Some died last week, others died 80 years ago, and memory just caught up. It already happened, your great-grandparents. Your grandparents are next, then your parents. Then you. The only variables left are order and method, because eventually, no one remains who knew you, and no one remains who didn't. That's not a tragedy. It's the deal everyone before you already took. So the real question isn't how to be remembered. It's what you do with the part that's actually yours right now, before it quietly becomes someone else's memory too.